The High Court rejects the government's plan to effectively ban a protest-related song. Reports say Washington will not invite John Lee to APEC summit in the U.S. And it is the hottest July ever globally. Good evening and thanks for joining us. The SAR government today lost its bid to get an injunction against the performing and broadcasting of a song associated with the 2019 anti-government protests, Glory to Hong Kong. That as the High Court questioned the effectiveness of the ban. Sharon Tang reports.
Representatives of the Department of Justice and journalist representatives appeared in court for the judgment this afternoon. The case was handled by High Court Judge Anthony Chan, and in his judgment, he explained why he rejected the government's application. The judge noted the purpose of the injunction does not aim to impose a blanket ban on Glory to Hong Kong, but instead it is in aid of criminal law. But considering what's being covered in the injunction will already be criminal acts punishable by current laws, the court believes the injunction will not be effective. Technically, if someone breaches the injunction, he or she will also constitute contempt of court. The court thinks that is not going to make the enforcement of the injunction any easier, since it will involve proving a criminal act. On top of that, the enforcement jurisdiction may also be in conflict with related criminal laws, such as the procedural requirements of the national security law regime. Still, the judge noted if it wasn't for the above reasons, he would have ruled in favor of granting the injunction based on the fundamental importance of national security, even if some think that the injunction will create a chilling effect. A senior counsel offered his views on the judgment.
I'm slightly surprised that these rather basic questions have not been thought through by the SAR government before they commence the application. If they wish to appeal, they have to convince the Court of Appeal that the judge had acted upon wrong principle or overlooked important material or arguments.
Meanwhile, the head of Hong Kong Journalists Association welcomes the decision, calling the judgment reasonable.
有關嘅歌曲
Upon concluding his ASEAN trip in Malaysia, Chief Executive John Lee said he has already asked the Department of Justice to go through the judgment carefully and actively look into taking follow-up actions. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
According to a report by the Washington Post, Chief Executive John Lee will not be invited to attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in November held in the U.S. Mimosa Ngai with more.
On Thursday, the Washington Post cited 3 anonymous U.S. officials as saying the White House has decided to bar Hong Kong leader John Lee from attending the APEC summit in November in San Francisco. The CE, alongside 10 other Hong Kong officials, are under sanctions by the U.S. since 2020 after the implementation of the city's national security law. A White House spokesperson refused to comment on the article, only saying that we are looking forward to the participation of all APEC member delegations in accordance with U.S. laws and regulations. Liu Pangyu, spokesman for the Chinese embassy in Washington, meanwhile disapproved of the White House decision and said this violates APEC rules and breaks the commitments made by the U.S. In Beijing, the Foreign Affairs Ministry urged the U.S. to reverse its decision immediately and correct other wrong practices, saying it should lift the sanctions on all SAR officials. The APEC summit made news in June when a group of U.S. lawmakers sent a letter to the State Department calling for the exclusion of John Lee from the economic conference. The move came after the State Department had made a written response to a question that the U.S. would consider inviting Lee to the summit. Following the letter, the department responded to the senators by changing its attitude, saying an incorrect version of the written response was delivered to Congress and no decisions about invitations have been made. According to Washington Post analysis, the exclusion of Lee from the summit may also affect the attendance of President Xi Jinping, even though the conference may have significant importance for China. Despite the recent effort of President Joe Biden to amend relations with China, Washington's latest decision may further intensify tension between the two countries. Mimosa Ngai, TVB News.
The Hong Kong government has called on the U.S. to fulfill its duty as host of the APEC summit. An executive council member criticized Washington for using the public trade body for its political gains.
Following the Washington Post's report, the SAR government reiterated that the U.S. is obliged to follow the rules and usual practice of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum as host of an upcoming meeting.
I've made it clear many times. It has been the practice for so many years. Hong Kong is a member economy of APEC, so I will expect the host economy to act in accordance with APEC rules, guidelines and conventions.
Under APEC guidelines, the host economy should invite all members 8 weeks before the summit takes place and facilitate their attendance. Since 1991, China has been an APEC member as a sovereign state, while Taiwan and Hong Kong joined APEC as member economies. After the handover, then Chief Executive Tong Chee-hwa represented the SAR for the first time at the APEC leaders' meeting held in Ottawa, Canada. Hong Kong city leaders over the years have been invited to take part, including Carrie Lam. Virtual participation too during the pandemic. Chief Executive John Lee was also invited to attend last year's APEC summit hosted by Thailand. Former member of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, Tam Yu-chung, slammed the U.S. for its double standard. Executive Council member and lawmaker Jeffrey Lam said the barring of John Lee to attend the APEC summit showed the U.S. is politicizing trade and economic cooperation for their own political agenda. Lam added APEC is an international body that doesn't belong to a single country.
Residents age 60 can now subscribe to the latest government silver bond program. The 8th batch of silver bond carries a minimum annual interest rate of 5%. Some elderly residents arrived at this bank in Central this morning to inquire about the latest government bond sale. Authorities said the target issuance size of this batch of bond will be increased from $35 billion last year to a minimum of $50 billion. An extra $5 billion may be added, depending on market response. The final day to subscribe to the bond is August 9th. The opening ceremony of the World University Games will commence in Chengdu shortly. It gave President Xi Jinping the chance to meet with the leaders of Guyana and Georgia, who are in Sichuan province, to attend the event. Xi said to the President Irfan Ali that China and Guyana enjoy a deep and close friendship. China is willing to deepen the alignment between the Belt and Road Initiative and Guyana's Low-Carbon Development Strategy 2030, Xi said. The Chinese president also met with Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili. Xi welcomes Georgia to expand its exports of high-quality products to China and encourages Chinese enterprises to invest in Georgia. Japan's annual defense white paper published Friday said China, Russia, and North Korea contribute to the most severe and complex security environment since the end of World War II. Japanese Defense Minister Yasukazu Hamada presented the report at the news conference today. The 510-page document claimed China's external stance and military activities have become a serious concern for Japan and the international community and presented an unprecedented and greatest strategic challenge. It predicted that China will possess 1,500 nuclear warheads by 2035 and increase its military superiority over Taiwan. Japan views this as a security threat. Beijing's foreign ministry said the Taiwan issue is China's domestic affair and Beijing does not tolerate foreign interference. The ministry added Japan should reflect on its own history of aggression. With a few more days still left in July, scientists have already declared the month as the hottest on record. With their internationally accepted goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial times, the temperature has crossed a threshold for a record 16 days this month. Tracy Furness has more.
As fires rage across Canada and Greece this month, destroying tens of millions of hectares, many people have been displaced, their land and homes destroyed. In the urban areas, many have tried to find ways to cool down. You are not alone in thinking it has been especially hot this month. Some scientists are declaring July 2023 the hottest on record.
Today, the World Meteorological Organization and the European Commission's Copernicus Climate Change Service are releasing official data that confirms that July 2023 is set to be the hottest month ever recorded in human history. July has already seen the hottest 3-week period ever recorded, the 3 hottest days on record, and the highest ever ocean temperatures for this time of year. The consequences are clear and they are tragic. Children swept away by monsoon rains, families running from the flames, workers collapsing in scorching heat. The era of global warming has ended, the era of global boiling has arrived.
If we look at the top 21 hottest day in terms of the global mean temperature, they have all occurred this month.
The Paris Climate Accord had aimed at a 20 to 30-year global temperature average of 1.5 degrees Celsius warmer than pre-industrial times, but this month has seen 16 days above that. Scientists say that such shattering of heat records is a harbinger for future climate-altering changes as the planet warms. In Colchester, England, it's the first day of spring barley harvest on this farm, but the owner says his job is getting harder as the climate changes.
With the extremes of weather that we're facing at the moment, it's very difficult to plan for the long term. Resilient farm businesses are absolutely crucial to delivering food production for today, but also for the next decade and beyond.
2022 was the first year the temperatures hit 40 degrees Celsius in the UK, and it was the warmest year in more than 150 years. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Still ahead, former US President Donald Trump faces yet more charges. Bands return to annual expo for animation, comics and games. Chief Executive says its mission accomplished in trip to 3 ASEAN countries. Welcome back. Further charges have been leveled against Donald Trump. The former U.S. president is now accused of pressuring an employee to delete Mar-a-Lago security camera footage. He's now facing 40 federal charges. David Garrett reports.
US prosecutors have broadened the case against Donald Trump. Here are the new documents. Charges of asking an employee to delete security camera footage and obstructing the investigation are added to the criminal indictment. Trump pleaded not guilty last month in Miami to federal charges of unlawfully retaining classified government documents. The former president is the leading Republican candidate for next year's US election and is expected to deny and fight the latest accusations.
He is accused of asking a colleague of his at Mar-a-Lago to delete surveillance footage at the complex. This is important because surveillance footage is what FBI investigators ultimately used to allege that they had probable cause to believe a crime was committed, namely that boxes had been moved in and out of the storage room in an effort to obstruct the investigation.
It's all about activities at Trump's luxurious residence in Florida. He's said to have concealed classified documents in various rooms after leaving office in 2021. Carlos de Oliveira, a member of staff at the Palm Beach residence, has also been indicted in the case. The prosecution say the suspect was asked by the boss, meaning Trump, to delete CCTV footage of boxes being moved, and Oliveira asked another employee how the video could be removed. CCTV is likely to be crucial in the prosecution case. Trump associate Walt Nauta was already named and has pleaded not guilty to helping Trump conceal classified documents. A trial date has been set for May next year.
And so this is the Justice Department's way of saying this case is not just about the presence of all these classified documents in different locations at Mar-a-Lago, but it's also about the repeated efforts by Trump and associates to prevent the Justice Department from getting them back.
Trump's legal team released a statement calling the charges politically biased, orchestrated by President Joe Biden, and a witch hunt. The saga has not hurt Trump as frontrunner in the Republican race to challenge Biden next year. Trump's lead over his nearest Republican rival has grown. A recent poll show 40% of the party's voters back him. Trump is also due to stand trial in March in New York because of alleged hush money paid to porn actor Stormy Daniels. David Garrett, TVB News.
A desperate search for survivors continues in the Philippines after a small boat capsized in strong winds. At least 26 are dead. The ferry was overcrowded. An overload of people moved towards one side of the boat when strong winds and waves hit, causing the vessel to tilt over. 40 people were rescued from the wreckage. The boat could be seen half submerged as rescue crews worked around it. The tragedy unfolded less than 50 meters from shore in Laguna de Bay, Rizal. At least 66 were aboard the craft designed to hold only 42. The Coast Guard thinks it's likely there were many more passengers, admitting they don't know the exact number. Religious services were held to commemorate the dead, and travel restrictions in place because of Typhoon Doksuri were lifted only hours before. Back locally, the city's biggest annual expo on animation, comics and games began today at the Convention and Exhibition Center. Besides a noticeable visitor increase, some exhibitors said they were optimistic about a big boost in business. Timothy Lee spoke with a number of cosplayers at the Anime Lovers event.
Heaven opened its pearly gates at 10 this morning. At least that's what many of the city's anime fans think. Excited visitors could not resist charging straight towards their favorite booths. One of the contenders for the most popular exhibition is this section selling limited collectible figures. Some fans of this Japanese series geared up in outfits faithful to the source material.
Today, I am Kamen Rider.
Some vendors selling collectible items said they were optimistic business will improve from last year, adding they expect a 40% boost in sales, mainly from limited figurines brought in from Japan. Unlike the previous year, visitors no longer have to wear masks when entering the premises, with many more choosing to dress up for the special occasion.
We are dressing the Marvel Avengers costume today. Yes, a lot of people take a picture with us. I'm making a 3D printer, but I try my best to learn the 3D printing and find some technology or in online.
This is going to be a group cosplay, so hopefully we can take photos as a group and maybe people will recognize us, but we're not really sure on that. So hopefully we do get a lot of fans.
Actually, compared with last year, this year is really a lot of people than last year. Personally, I think this year actually is more people cosplay or dress up because, we can now take off our masks.
The fair also held special promotional events to support local comic artists in a bid to increase awareness of Hong Kong's creative industries.
The 2023 Anacon will last for a total of 5 days until the 1st of August. Event organizers will also hold a cosplay catwalk show on the final day of the event. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Chief Executive John Lee concluded a 3-country tour in Malaysia, signing a total of 33 treaties with Southeast Asian partners. Earlier this morning, the CE paid a visit to a local hawker center to meet with locals and try a variety of Malay delicacies. Lee will return to Hong Kong tomorrow. Timothy Lee again.
Earlier today, John Lee and his delegation met with members of Malaysia's business sector. The CE spoke with the local Minister of Transport, who emphasized further cooperation between the airports of Kuala Lumpur and Hong Kong.
From Kuala Lumpur, we fly to almost all destinations within the ASEAN region. So I can see that there is a strong collaboration that can happen between Kuala Lumpur International Airport and Hong Kong International Airport.
This morning, the chief executive and his delegation started their day with a rich Malay breakfast. Visiting the Pasar Pudu Baharu Hawker Center in Kuala Lumpur on his second day in the Southeast Asian country, the CE went for a fresh cup of kopi teh, a drink made of coffee mixed with milk tea. The tea maker said Lee enjoyed his drink and asked how the beverage was made, adding that the CE showed interest in the lives of local residents. He said he bought some Hainan tea to enjoy with his wife back home, and that the hawker center really brought back childhood memories. A number of restaurant patrons at the food center shared the thoughts of the chief executive's visit. This man was shocked that an international figure would visit their neighborhood and interact with the locals. While the shopkeeper said he tried to sell some durians to the city's chief, and noted that Lee told him he used to visit Malaysia at least once a year. John Lee also shared how his visit to the three ASEAN countries achieved greater consensus and cooperation between the city and Southeast Asia.
I attach great importance to Hong Kong's relation with ASEAN member states, and that is one of the key purposes of our visit this week. With the support of the 10 countries of ASEAN for Hong Kong to get into RCEP as a member, we feel, of course, very happy and grateful for the support. RCEP represents about 1/3 of economic activities and population, and the economic engine for growth is going to be Asia and this region.
Sources say that Lee will depart from Malaysia for the SAR at around noon tomorrow. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
A man plunged to his death at MidLevels last night. The victim is reportedly a French national who fell off from a high-rise residential building in a possible parkour accident. It's understood the 30-year-old man entered Tregunter Tower at around 6 p.m. Sources say the lock of the top floor of the residential block was pried open, and the man's sports camera was found to be containing videos of extreme sports. Police believe the Frenchman may have fallen because of bad weather. A car crashed into a security booth at Justice Place this morning. No one was injured. A man approached police and told them he was the driver and was placed under arrest. At about 7:30 a.m., the vehicle veered off Lower Albert Road and hit the booth. 3 men in the car left the site of the accident. Police say they arrested the 23-year-old of Indian descent, who claims to be the driver on suspicion of criminal damage and dangerous driving. He passed alcohol and drug tests. Police say it will not tolerate any attempts to challenge the city's rule of law, which is safeguarded by the Department of Justice. More investigations are underway. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.